I'd like to call the August 11th, 2022 Addison Township Zoning Board of Appeals meeting to order, and we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if we could have a roll call of the board, please.
Tony Spina.
Here.
Ed Brakefield.
Here.
Jay Sandler.
Here.
Bill Marshall.
Here.
Vice Chair Smith.
Here.
Chair DeWitt.
Here. Okay, just for our order of business, I'm asking that we amend our agenda to flip the case 22-6 and 22-7 on our agenda. Do you have a motion to do that?
I'll make that motion.
Support?
Support.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Jay Sandler.
Yes.
Bill Marshall.
Yes.
Tony Spina.
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith.
Yes.
Chair DeWitt.
Yes.
Trustee Brakefield, yes.
Trustee Brakefield, or Ed Brakefield, you would remain recused from the first matter then. You can stay here, but because the public hearing's over, but you shouldn't participate or vote.
Vote is closed.
Switch places for, you'll switch places. You don't have to physically switch places. You'll be the alternate, you'll go back to alternate for the second matter.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the July 14th, 2022 minutes. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Support?
Mr. Brakefield, you should not vote on the minutes either.
I'll second that then.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Having none, we'll have a roll call vote on the approval of the minutes.
Bill Marshall.
Yes.
Tony Spina.
Yes.
Jay Sandler.
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith.
Yes.
Chair DeWitt.
Yes. Okay, with our revised agenda, the first item, our first case is 22-6. The applicant is Robert Going and Dana Schultz Going. The applicant's parcel address is 1285 Noble Road. The zoning is agriculture. Parcel ID is 05.16.201.002. The applicant is seeking an interpretation of the Township of Addison Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, Code of Ordinances, Article 2, Section 2.02, title, definitions, dwelling, and the applicant also seeks an appeal of an administrative decision from the building official for the zoning compliance application submitted February 8th, 2022. Article 6, Section 6.02, permitted principal uses, 1, single-family residential detached dwellings. Okay, first off, public hearing on this matter was closed last month, so there won't be any more public hearing or comments on the matter. Tonight is our deliberation stage where we make a decision on the request. And what I would ask is that if the applicant has any other matters they want to bring to the board's attention, any comments or anything like that.
Good evening, my name is Anthony Vittilio. I saw a gentleman last month, and I think that we've presented a record, and we've asked that the board approve Mr. Going's application. I think that what we've shown is the floor plan that was submitted with the February application is single-family residence. That floor plan does not show 2 independent living units. It's one plan. And our client desires to live in that home with his family and with his parents. We've shown that during this process of submitting various plan iterations, our client and his builder responded to the building official's email from September 17, 2021, where there were reasons identified for the initial denial. One being separate and distinct basements, separate and distinct first floor living spaces, separate and distinct front ingress and egress doors, separate and distinct rear ingress, egress doors, separate and distinct garage dwelling, ingress, egress doors, separate and distinct front porches, separate and distinct rear decks. Those reasons were given to Mr. Going on why the initial plan was denied. The floor plan that was submitted in February addressed all of those issues. And for those reasons, and because of the definition of dwelling that we were provided under the residential building code, we're asking the panel to just grant Mr. Bowman's land use application to build his home.
Or you do have the building official here, made arrangements for him to be here if you have questions for Mr. Lowe.
And does the board have any questions of the applicant or official? Mr. Smith, do you have any questions or comments?
I would ask the building official if the revised correspondence from the applicant meet his specifications.
No, it did not. The revised drawings indicated substantially a two-family dwelling with separate and distinct laundries, toilets, kitchens, sleeping quarters, completely separate and distinct from each other.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Smith?
That's all for me right now.
Excuse me, Tony Spina, do you have any comments or questions?
I assume there's been no changes since last month.
Do you mean has there been any resubmittals?
Yes, any other plan changes or anything?
I don't think so.
No, okay. Okay, I guess I'm done for right now.
Mr. Greenfield, you're remaining silent, of course. Mr. Marshall, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I have one question. There was some discussion last month about possibly doing a deed restriction. Any further discussions on that, or that proceeded or not proceeded?
No, we don't have anything in writing here, although the applicant remains willing to produce a restrictive covenant. Like we discussed the last.
Yeah, to restrict rental.
Well, I think we were talking along the lines of restricting the use of ever becoming a duplex use, where you would have, a rental situation with an unrelated family party in half the home and try to work out that wording, but I don't have anything on that.
Yeah, that seems to be a helpful solution.
As you deliberate, you can deliberate with the understanding that could be in place. Or you guys know you're always allowed to make decisions subject to something of that nature. You essentially have two issues before you this evening. You have to do an interpretation of the zoning ordinance as requested. And that would probably be the logical first step. And then you have to make a decision on whether you want to affirm or reverse the decision of the building official. The building official essentially denied the zoning compliance permit, indicating that the structure as presented, the design of the structure as presented, did not meet the criteria of the definition of a single-family residential dwelling. So you have to maybe do your interpretation. I know you've worked hard on that, I think, anyways. And then maybe the next question would be what action you would take on the building official's decision.
May I state three things? Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Could you speak louder, please?
Yes, sir. I think for purposes of the record, the February submittal was denied by the quote-unquote planner. That's the information that we received back, and that's in the record. Secondly, our client would be willing to give a restrictive covenant of some sort, along the lines of restricting the use of his home to what's allowed under the AG zoning district, if that would satisfy this panel. And third is just a request for clarification whether the gentleman that just stood up and spoke is the current building official or not for the township.
He is not. He's the one who made the decision that you're challenging, but since has retired.
Who is the current building official?
Randy,
Warnick, Randy Warnick.
right.
He's out of town.
Yeah, I don't, what's his last name?
Warnick?
Warnick.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board to the applicant?
I was under the impression that Doug was the building official, and he is not right at this present time, sir?
No, I'm not for the township, although I'm still a registered building official and a registered building inspector
Okay,
with the state of Michigan.
all right. The gentleman mentioned took your place, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
What was that effective, please?
That's been about a month and a half now.
About a month and a half. But you were the building official that handled the correspondence in this particular case, is that correct?
That's correct. For approximately a year, this was ongoing.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else from the board? Anything else from the applicant? Could you state your name, please?
Well,
Yes, my name's Robert Going. I'm the main applicant on this. You know, and I understand you gentlemen have your concerns with the township zoning. And it's your due diligence to approve, deny, you know, whom you allow build in within the community. We do have many upstanding citizen friends that are in the community, friends of actually many of you, your township officials as well, that can validify what I just said about ourselves. But our lives are being affected by this, where you guys approve this, deny this, might not be so much, you know, we don't have anything but good to bring to the community. And I will say through the process, through the building official, our first time building a home, it has been nothing short of a very challenging experience. And I'm not here to badmouth him, but just gathering through my builder, through other municipalities, other township supervisors, building officials, Waterford, Oakland, that a lot of things that we've endeavored we should not have been put through. We submitted the most recent application in February, and we never received a denial until, I think it was mid-June, until we filed an appeal without knowing if we'd been approved or not. We never received a response. We hounded Mr. Lowe, what's going on with our case. It's been turned over to the township attorney for review. Okay, then that time elapsed a month. What's going on now that the plans are with the township planner. So when we received the correspondence in mid-June that we did not be approved, we weren't approved, it was under the township planner's quote-unquote one-sentence email that we received from Mr. Lowe with nothing else. Only after I filed an appeal process, just for determination. It's been very challenging through the entire process to get this done. Like I said, the plan is just an open floor plan for my family. We have no intention of renting this out to anybody. We're going to live there. This is my retirement home. I'm willing to put a restrictive covenant in place to appease that. I mean, certain individuals here, I can't get into specifics, know us. I mean, surrounding our property. My wife's family built the house next to Mr. Marshall across the street, and the house next to the farmhouse in the corner. I mean, our blood goes deep in the area. So, I mean, we're not just an average citizen looking to move in there and build an apartment complex. I mean, we have one set of utilities, one front door, one garage. I mean, the plans speak for themselves. I don't know what else to say, but, I mean, I'm surprised we're deliberating this. I mean, again, you know, I just, it's been very confusing the entire time. I know we started the process in September. It hasn't been a year yet, but it's been a long, you know, 10, 11 months. So, it's cost us time or, you know, financial. But I appreciate you guys considering all avenues here. It's, like I said, we're a good family, and you know, it'd be a shame to push us away, you know. That's all I have to say.
If there aren't any more comments, then it's time for...
Well, I guess I'd like to only add that I know this seems personal to you because you're sitting there. And I understand your attorney would like us to make a decision based solely on what you provided and what you told us. We have no reason to doubt at all. But houses last longer than people do. And part of our job is to look forward 20, 50, 100 years. Sure. I won't be around 100 years either, but what might happen in the future? Such as the next owner, what he might do with that property. Or the owner after that. I mean, properties roll over on the average, what, 7 years? It's not long enough.
Yeah, I think the restrictive covenant, I mean, the home would be built at that point, but I think the restrictive covenant would address that concern.
Well, and that would be fine. I had hoped that we would have some of those words to talk about tonight, but I guess we're not. So I'll repeat the comment I made last month, and that is, with the plans the last plans that I've seen, which apparently have not changed in the last month, if that were my house for $50, a trivial amount, the price of a house, I could buy 2 of these at Home Depot. That's where this came from. And make 2 complete houses, 2 complete living structures out of that house. That's what the plan. I'm not challenging. I'm not saying that that's what you're going to do, but the next owner might.
Sure, Mr. Marshall.
Okay. What I'm getting out of this is we're setting up actually 2 different households within one dwelling. Is it feasible to have a common kitchen, a common laundry room, instead of separate ones? That's what's setting it off as a duplex.
It is a common laundry room. And the other kitchenette is a kitchenette. It's not a full kitchen.
Right, but efficiency apartment is, you know, have a little kitchenette, living room, bedroom, and a bath. And the prints that I've seen here shows that one area as so. That's why I was wondering if it would be feasible to share a kitchen. Of course, they definitely want their own bathroom. I can understand that. But I can't understand the double laundry rooms.
Yeah, it's just one family.
Yeah, right.
It's one family.
Yes, I realize that, yeah.
Gentlemen, I mean, there's plenty of single-family homes that have 2 laundry rooms, 2 kitchens, a unit. But I think the key here is just, this is one dwelling. These are not 2 independent living spaces.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Smith?
have you had correspondence with the applicant as to what kind of language this supposed agreement would be? And besides that, like Tony said, we're not here to humiliate the applicant, but as long as I've been around here on the board, decisions made by this board go with the property, not with the applicant. So I agree with Tony that if something unforeseen happens or their plans change, the next person has a legal obligation to do what he wants to do with what he buys. So my question is, have you had any, is this going to be a permanent deed restriction? I mean, in perpetuity?
The discussions I had with the applicant's attorney are that the applicant is willing to work with us to create an acceptable covenant restriction that would run with the land. Obviously, it would run with the land only during the time that the land was zoned for its current R1 ag, single-family dwelling residential unit uses. If in the future the property somehow magically got zoned for industrial or something else, obviously the restriction would no longer apply. But what I heard from the applicant is the applicant's willing to enter a document that would run with the land that would bind the use to a single-family residential dwelling for one, designed for one family unit, and would house one family unit as the ordinance is defined. So yes, I did receive that communication, Mr. Smith. Is that a fair characterization?
I believe so, and I think we go a step further and say that a restriction could be worked out where a single family would be living in that home versus two families that are not related by blood.
So you would, that's what we discussed the last time, that you were willing to restrict it to bloodline relatives, even the people sitting behind you there. That you were willing to restrict it to bloodline relatives. I think you talked a little bit about the kids that come back on the revolving door issue.
Sure. Bloodline and their spouses, you know, I don't.
Yeah, spouses. Okay, we did talk about that. Yes, Mr. Smith, that was discussed, and I did receive a confirmation that they were willing to do that since our last meeting.
In our zoning ordinance, are there other uses for single-family dwellings?
If you, it might be wise, as I said, that you work on your interpretation of the ordinance. That's one of the issues before you, maybe if you get through your interpretation, that'll answer some of those questions. But my understanding is that a single-family residential dwelling in your community is a building that is designed exclusively for use and occupancy by one family unit. And that's found in a definition section. And then you further have definitions, which I'm not sure you were aware of because I wasn't aware. You do have definitions of what is a family. So your zoning ordinance defines dwelling. Your zoning ordinance defines single residential dwelling, and your ordinance defines family.
I'm aware of some single-family residential places that have group homes in, or group, I guess they're called a group home. What about that?
Well, those are different animals that are sometimes permitted by the state of Michigan for group foster homes and or other uses. They do, in many communities, allow those to infiltrate otherwise residential zoning districts. But that's through a special process. I don't think that the applicant here is looking for this to be a group home for, you know what I'm talking about, for
Bloodline.
right.
Just, the property is zoned AG.
Yeah, which is 6.02, one of the principal permitted uses is single-family residential, right?
Correct.
Right, and so your request for the zoning interpretation is, well, what does that mean? And so I was just telling them that there's a series of things in the zoning ordinance that help define that. My understanding is what I said, but that's for you to provide your interpretation this evening. I don't have any information, Mr. Smith, that the applicant is looking to be a group foster home, a group rehab home, or any sort of group activity that is often allowed in residential, but it's through a separate permitting process.
As long as I've been on the planning commission and the ZBA, I've never ever recalled anybody coming to either one of those boards and asking for a special use for a group home.
No, they usually work with the state of Michigan on that.
So the township has no jurisdiction over that?
I don't really know. I actually would be, I would have to look at that if you want that answer.
Thank you.
Okay, so just to say it one more time, you'd be willing to, I don't know if we have to define bloodline. I think we all know what bloodline is, just like we know what single-family house means. So, but you're willing to, some words along the line of what a normal person would think of as family.
Absolutely.
And limit it to that.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments? Applicant?
On the topic of family, it is defined in the ordinance, defined in your ordinance.
I know that the term bloodline was used, and I don't want to automatically just...
I think the definition does use.
That's why I'm bringing it, that's what I'm saying. So, yes.
Well, let's... Thought I pulled that out. So, a domestic family, under the definition of family, a domestic family, that is one or more persons living together and related by the bonds of yeah, a word I don't know. What is that? I never did that. The bonds of something, marriage or adoption, together with servants of the principal occupants, and not more than one additional unrelated person, with all such individuals being domiciled together as a single domestic housekeeping unit at a dwelling.
Not that we could ever afford a housekeeper, but I'm guessing that's what that would be. Servants.
Yeah, the ordinance might have been written a while ago.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Mr. Spina, is that you would like, you would really like to see it linked by family relation, you know, relative.
Genetics, or
Yeah.
I don't know what the right word would be.
Genetic/marriage.
I think
Oh, yeah.
the ordinance consanguinity.
Really, I haven't come across that. What is that? I don't even know what it means. What you're smart
Like
about.
blood and spouse.
I forget, that's law school language.
All right, hang on.
Look it up on your smartphone. I should have looked it up every time.
Well, I think it's also important for the panel to look at the definition of what a multiple family dwelling unit is, because that was the grounds for the denial, that this floor plan is a multiple family dwelling unit. And that definition is a building or portion thereof designed exclusively for occupancy by two or more families living independently of each other. And all the evidence before you shows the opposite of that. It's one family living with each other.
You know, we're just, I think what Tony's saying, you
I
got to
disagree with that completely, because, I mean, yes, you consider yourself one family, you and your parents, but they're certainly two, they're related naturally, but they're certainly two families, and they were a very small expenditure. I, as a homeowner, could turn this into two completely separate houses.
consequently, it means the fact of being descended from the same ancestor.
That's all.
Thanks. Well, if you go back far enough, we're all descended from the same ancestor, depending on what vote you're being on.
Okay, anyways.
Any thoughts from the board? We're ready for a motion.
My question is, if there is such an agreement, what are we agreeing to, and can we vote on something that hasn't even been written up yet?
You're right, we can't vote on something that isn't before us.
I mean, this isn't like he says he's gonna plant a tree tomorrow, and that, we'll see if he plants a tree and everything's okay, but my question is, can we vote on language that we've never even seen?
Well, you shouldn't, but you could tackle the other issue this evening first, the zoning interpretation. Because that is one of their requests they're looking, and you're obligated to provide your interpretation of the ordinance that they've requested to be interpreted. And then maybe you can move to the next issue after that.
At a different meeting, or?
I don't know, whatever you guys decide.
It's in our hand at the moment. Mr. Marshall, you were going to say something?
I was going to ask a question. Is the floor plan that we have here, is that the finalized floor plan? Or is that,
I believe that was the general design of the floor plan minus, I noticed on the one, there was a typo with a 3-car as opposed to a 4-car, but the layout, the design that is
that is the design?
yes.
Unless there's any,
Would you just state what the question is we're going to be talking about? Just
Okay.
make sure that everybody's clear.
the first question is, the applicant seeks an interpretation of the Township of Addison Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, Code of Ordinances, Article 2, Section 2.02, title definition of dwelling. And then there's the question about, that's the first question. What is a dwelling?
Right, your interpretation of the provision they asked to be interpreted.
The next question was about the denial.
So independent of the second question, you can proceed with, if you have an interpretation of the ordinance, you can do that. I don't know if it doesn't affect the second procedure.
Well, frankly, whatever we do tonight, they are free to amend their plans and/or ask for some variance or whatever else. Right now, we're just interpreting. Correct?
Right.
In layman's language, what are we interpreting?
You are interpreting the ordinance definition of a single-family residential dwelling as
applied to the floor plan submitted.
we interpret the ordinance, when we ask for a zoning interpretation of an ordinance, we interpret the ordinance as written. What does it mean? Then the second analysis is how does it apply to your situation? So your zoning, your interpretation of the zoning ordinance is a neutral event. You're interpreting the zoning ordinance based on the zoning ordinance. your application of that interpretation would go to the issue of whether or not you're going to uphold the decision of the building official based on that definition.
So are they asking us to say in funny language that the ordinance of Addison Township doesn't hold water?
No.
No?
I think they're just asking, the building official has said that what they submitted is not a single-family residential dwelling. So one of the things an applicant in your community can do is say, well, what is the definition in the township of a single-family residential dwelling? And you should answer that interpretation question. That's just an interpretation of the ordinance that you have.
So the answer...
You don't make the ordinances, you're not here to change the ordinance, you're not the body who approves ordinances, but you are the body that provides a zoning ordinance interpretation.
So we're to decide if it means what it says or it doesn't, right?
Yeah, and I think, yes, right. You can then move to the second issue if you want.
Good. You all clear on that?
Yeah, it either means what it says or it doesn't, one or the other.
Do we have the specific wording of the ordinance we can read? Or refers to dwelling?
Well,
It should be in our packet. It's in our packet.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. Just bring it down some paper. And I think if we're going to interpret what the word dwelling means, we need to read that section of the ordinance.
well, okay.
That was, I believe that was provided to, maybe not everybody, but
Somebody else had an Andy.
The word dwelling says it is a building or portion thereof containing sleeping, living, room space, kitchen, and bathroom facilities designed for and occupied by one family.
Where are you reading that from? Because I'm looking at the ordinance with a different definition.
I just was looking at my notes. If you want to read the whole definition, go ahead.
But just from the ordinance,
Yeah, there's a definition of dwelling, and then lower two definitions down, there's another definition that I think is relevant.
sorry about it.
And that's the one I read.
So it appears to come back to the question of one family.
Designed for and occupied by one family.
As opposed to multiple families.
Correct. Which is also defined.
And I think when you read the definition of family earlier, that applied to what the Goins are doing, that parents living with them constitute part of the family.
Yes, that would be for you to interpret, yes. So again, I would recommend you tackle the issue of the zoning interpretation first.
Well, unless there's any more questions, I'm ready to make a motion. All right? All right. First motion for the night is this board is asked to interpret section 2.02 definitions of a zoning ordinance for the term dwelling. The term dwelling is a defined definition in the zoning ordinance. Our interpretation, we apply the plain language and we follow the rules of statutory construction. The word shall means mandatory. The word may means permissive. The word and joins together phrases. The word or separates phrases. As I understand it, we must look at each word and give each word consideration. We do not leave any word behind. The word dwelling says it is a building or portion thereof containing sleeping, living, room space, kitchen, and bathroom facilities designed for and occupied by one family. This is the relevant portion of the definition that we are asked to interpret. The definition includes the phrase "designed for." These words cannot be ignored. Thus, the interpretation must address these words. As I understand it, we may consult the dictionary definition to determine the ordinary meaning of undefined terms. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines the term "design" to mean to create, fashion, execute, or construct according to plan. Two definitions down, the zoning ordinance specifically defines dwelling, one family. This is helpful. That definition says a building designed exclusively for and occupied exclusively by one family. Here the word exclusively is used twice. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines the term exclusively to mean in an exclusive manner, in a way limited to a single person, group, or category. Finally, the zoning ordinance defines family as being two possible things. A family is defined in the zoning ordinance as follows. Family means either of the following. 1, a domestic family, that is one or more persons living together and related by the bonds of consanguinity, marriage or adoption, together with servants of the principal occupants and not more than one additional unrelated person, with all of such individuals being domiciled together as a single domestic housekeeping unit in a dwelling. The second definition is the functional equivalent of a domestic family, that is, persons living together in a dwelling unit whose relationship is of a permanent and distinct character and is the functional equivalent of a domestic family with a demonstrable and recognizable bond that constitutes the functional equivalent of the bonds which render the domestic family a cohesive unit. All persons of the functional equivalent of the domestic family must be cooking and otherwise operating as a single housekeeping unit. This definition shall not include any society, club, fraternity, sorority, association, lodge, coterie, organization, or group where the common living arrangement and where the basis for the establishment of the functional equivalency of the domestic family is likely or contemplated to exist for a limited or temporary duration. There shall be a rebuttable presumption enforceable by the building inspector in the first instance that the number of persons who may reside as a functional equivalent family shall be limited to 6 to 6. Such presumption may be rebutted by application for a special approval use based upon the applicable standards in this ordinance. For the issue presented here tonight, I move that we interpret the zoning ordinance definition of a one-family dwelling to mean the following using all of the definitions presented. A building designed exclusively to be occupied by one family. While the applicant has indicated the intent to occupy the building with family only, the balance of this interpretation requires that the building be designed exclusively to be occupied exclusively by one family. Thus, the ordinance requires that the design itself be analyzed to ensure that the design is for a structure to be used exclusively by one family. That's my motion. We have support?
That's support your motion.
Discussion on the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? There being no discussion, need a roll call vote on the motion.
Tony Spina?
Yes.
Jay Sandler?
Yes.
Bill Marshall?
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith?
Yes.
Chair DeWitt?
Yes. Motion passes.
So
Now
that,
we know what a single family house is.
well, that satisfies the first request by the applicant that you interpret that, and it appears you interpreted what you think it means.
So did we just say that the ordinance as it stands says what it means?
Yes.
I'm just asking to make sure I understand.
But the normal person would think of as a single family house.
Yeah.
So the next question is, where is it? The applicant seeks an appeal of an administrative decision from the building official for the zoning compliance application submitted February 8th of 2022 regarding Article 6, Section 6.02, permitted principal uses, 1, single-family residential detached dwellings. That's our next issue. If we don't have any more discussion on that, I can make another motion. See,
Well, now, before you read your new motion, just to verify the fact that we said that the ordinance says what it means and we're not changing it one bit, so that the new, or that the application that the gentleman is handing us has to comply with what we just said is okay. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, you provided your interpretation of the requested zoning ordinance provision. The second issue is that the applicant submitted a series of plans, the most recent plan, to your building department for zoning compliance permit processes. And it was rejected because your building official, using what he thinks a single-family residential dwelling means in your ordinance, he viewed what he was reviewing as being not a single-family residential family unit. And so he denied the zoning compliance permit, and I believe the applicant is asking you to reverse that decision that the building official made.
Based on our definition.
Based on the definition and interpretation. So they're asking you in a sense to say, hey, what we submitted is in fact a single-family residential building structure, right?
Correct, and not a multiple family building structure as defined in your ordinance. It's either one or the other.
Okay, now, you're limiting us to a decision by your statement just then. I think our decision should be that if the applicant's application fully complies with our zoning ordinance,
Or not, that's it.
or not. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Didn't he limit us
This
with
is-
what he said?
We don't have two choices here, we have some number of choices.
No.
Yeah,
His application either complies with the ordinance or it doesn't.
or doesn't.
Amen. Okay.
So, unless there's any more questions, I'll make another motion on this second request. Okay. This board is asked to review the decision of the building official related to permitted principal use set forth in the applicable ordinance as being single-family residential detached dwellings. This is in section 6.02 of the zoning ordinance under agricultural district. I move, or my motion is, that we uphold the decision of the building official for the following reasons. The ordinance interpretation is very clear in my opinion. A single-family residential dwelling means a building designed exclusively to be occupied by one family. Each word involved must be considered, including the words designed and exclusively. The plans submitted for consideration do not, in my opinion, show a building designed exclusively to be occupied by one family. 3, the plans submitted for consideration show a design for 2 family units, which is not a permitted use in section 6.02. I note that nothing in this motion upholding the decision of the building official prevents the applicant from meeting with the building official and developing a plan that shows a residential dwelling designed exclusively to be occupied by one family unit. Do I have support for that motion?
I'll support that.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote on the motion, please.
Jake Sandberg,
I didn't hear you. Oh, you calling me?
Yes.
Yeah,
We're voting on the motion.
I vote no.
Phil Marshall,
Yes.
excuse me. Yes vote,
Yes vote passes the motion. And
but the
opposed,
motion is to
uphold the building
the building
official's
inspector.
determination.
I will make sure that, so yes means no in this case.
So the town, if we vote yes, the township prevails and the applicant is denied.
Right, I want to make sure that we
If you vote
understand.
yes on his motion, the way it's worded, you're upholding the decision of the building.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's what I was
A yes vote supports the building
So
official's
if you
decision.
want to call the roll again from the beginning.
Okay, we all clear on that first?
Yeah.
Yes. I voted no.
Jay Sandler,
No.
Phil Marshall,
No.
Tony Svina,
Well, I have no doubt that the intended and initial use of this structure will be to house a single family, as we've talked about here today. It is just too easy to convert this property into a multiple family structure. You could have a 10 apartment building that one family lives in. The whole 10 things, the whole 10 apartments. But that would be very easy to turn back into a 10 apartment building. I have to say yes. Yes to the motion. The township is correct. This is, in fact, or could easily be, very easily become a two-family structure.
So your vote is yes.
My vote is yes to the motion.
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes.
Chair DeWitt,
Yes. Motion passes. Okay. That concludes our deliberation on case 22.6. Okay. So our next, you want to take a break?
Take a break and let the people.
5-minute recess. Okay, let's call to order, recall to order our August 11th, 2022 ZBA board meeting after our break here. The next agenda item is case number 22-7. Applicant is Bailey Barrel. Okay. That's the little guy, right? Okay. Applicant's parcel address is 420 Mac Road. Parcel ID is 0526126003. Zoning is suburban farms. This is our public hearing. The applicant seeks variances from the Township of Addison Code of Ordinances, Appendix A. Code of Ordinances, Article 7A, Section 7A.05.4, minimum yard setback, rear 50 feet. The applicant is requesting the following variance. Variance of 21.85 feet from Article 7A, Section 7A.05.4, and Article 24, same, rear 50 feet. Okay, since this is our public hearing, oh, is it, can you confirm that that's your request?
Yes.
Okay. So this is our public hearing, so I need a motion to open the matter for a public hearing.
I make a motion to open the matter for public hearing.
Support?
Yes.
Okay. Have a roll call for opening the public hearing at, what time is it? It's 6:59.
Ed Brakefield,
Yes.
Tony Svina,
Yes.
Jay Sandler,
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes.
Chair DeWitt.
Yes. Okay. This is an opportunity for the public to make a comment. Mr. Smith, you're the only public member. Do you want to make a comment?
I do not. Thank you very much for asking.
Okay. No public being apparent. I have a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
And roll call vote, please.
Ed Brakefield,
Yes.
Jay Sandler,
Yes.
Tony Svina?
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith?
Yes.
Chair Whit?
Yes. Okay. Now the applicant, you can present your petition to the board.
Okay. I'm not really sure how this works, but, so,
Spit it out.
okay.
Tell the board what you're doing and why you need a variance.
Okay, so we want to put a barn on the side, like the side of the house over there. Obviously, we don't want it to be set back from the front of the house for aesthetics and to apply with the ordinances of the township and all that. But I would like to make it deeper than what the setback will allow. So we're asking for an appeal on that setback, so that way we can set the building back further, but still get the depth that we want and have it situated on the property where we're looking for it.
So you want to put an accessory structure in the side yard, which is
Correct.
allowed, but you want it to go deeper and into the rear yard setback.
Correct.
By
20 feet.
20 feet.
Just roughly, yeah.
Okay. I think it's pretty clear.
You just moved it back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there, you mind if I help him along?
Sure, yeah.
Is there a reason why you need to go that far back?
In order to get the building size that we're looking for to accommodate what we have planned for it, that's where it needs to sit, to have the setback from the front of the house and make the driveway and make everything look with landscaping and all that to make it look great.
Is that the minimum amount of the setback that you can live with? I mean, have you done everything you can to minimize the setback?
Yes.
Well, let me ask the same question a different way.
Yeah.
How did you end up with this size barn? Like, what's it? Not a barn the same size, so I mean, it's a pretty big barn, but what's the plan?
To be able to have 2 vehicles deep on the one side, and then that's what it would take up, and then the other one would be open for actually our parents' camper. Yeah.
Toys and
Yeah.
stuff.
Recreation?
Yep. Exactly.
And just to kind of go a little step further, where your house is situated on the lot, you can't, the house is sitting way back on the lot, so you can't, there's no extra room.
Correct.
to work with.
Yeah, the house set, I think it was 68 feet, 68 feet off the back is what the back of our house is set when it was initially built, so where it's
61 feet.
61, so where it was situated, it's, yeah.
Did you build your house or did you?
No, we bought it.
That's good. The house was 50
What's
feet
behind
from
you?
the alley.
What's behind your property?
So directly behind where the barn would go is, there's a yard, so our property backs up to a property off of Moffett.
Okay.
On the opposite side of where the corner of the barn would go, they have an accessory building there, but it's just an open yard on our end with pine trees on that. And then our next door neighbor, which would be to the east, their property goes deeper, and they have a horse pasture right there. So that corner has a horse pasture, and then it's an open yard.
Right, and each of your neighbors would have gotten a letter from the township telling them about the public hearing.
Yep.
So far as I know, we have not received anything pro or con from anybody.
And I did talk to all of our neighbors around us to make sure, because when we were looking at this and trying to figure out what we were going to do, obviously, we plan on being there a long time, so and we're the young ones moving in, so I don't want to make waves and make anybody upset, and they all seem to agree that that's what was going on.
They have consanguinity. Whatever that word is.
We learned a new word.
How far is this going to be off the property line?
So we were going, the closest corner I think was 28 feet is what it was. Because the back property line runs on an angle.
28 feet. Right here.
Oh, that's the rear line.
Yeah,
From the sideline, 15 feet.
correct.
And a little.
The side yard setback, I think, is 15 feet. You're not encroaching into the 15 feet.
Correct.
You're only encroaching into the rear yard setback.
Correct.
Because you want to go deeper,
By 21 feet.
given the location and frontage of your.
It should be 50, it's 28. Rounded.
That's what
So, I'm just moving. So it's 20 feet.
So the 50 The rear yard setback is 50 feet.
The side yard.
The side yard is 50.
It's gotta be set back behind the house.
They're not violating the side yard.
It's within 3/10 of a foot.
There is no,
Right to the front of the
there is no dimension, so I don't know how far. Do you know how far the front of the barn is behind the front of the house? There's no dimension on this drawing.
So if you drew a line parallel to the front of your house,
So from the front of our, if the house comes and then the porch comes out and steps out with the front of with the garage, you can see the garage. So from the front of the garage, it was like 17 feet back from that.
That's how, since it's not necessary.
Yeah, show them the picture.
Here's what we're looking at, to make sure that, my question is, what is this
From there,
from here, that's the front of your house to here?
when we figured and laid it out, that was about 17 feet. The surveyor never put that on there, but from where I marked this out, it's
So
roughly
if the barn
17.
went that way 17 feet, it would not stick out in front of your house?
No, but it would,
And it
like, yeah, it wouldn't stick out in front of that part.
Well, yeah, that's the front of your house.
Yep, yeah.
So you could move it forward 20 feet?
Yeah.
Or 17 feet.
17 feet, yeah.
Reduce the
almost
variance. Yeah, you're almost there.
You'd still need a variance.
Yeah, but
Well, or you could
Less
move it
variance.
25 feet and get a variance for 4 feet from the house. I mean, it's like, all those things we could do.
but Tony's suggestion is right on.
I think you understand.
You understand what Tony's saying?
Yeah, I totally understand what you're
Sure.
I mean, it may not be
Monkey off your
aesthetically as
shoulders.
pretty as you'd like, but.
Right, yeah, like, so, with the way that our property's set up, that back corner, that there's a hill that comes down that runs towards the house, the whole back of the property comes down and comes towards the house. We put a boulder retaining wall along that back, and then the barn is set where it was, so then that way it's not sitting in front of the house, and then it doesn't encroach into the driveway as you come up and around. But yeah, we definitely could do it.
Well, if you moved it forward, what would be the variance required?
4 feet, 5 feet?
Yeah.
Something like that.
At the most, I think it's 17, it'd be 3 feet, wouldn't it? It'd be
Depends,
minimal. It'd be
we're
very-
rounding, we're talking about numbers rounded off. So
Right.
it'd be 3, 4, 5 feet.
One of the concepts in variance is that you should always seek the least amount of variance that's possible.
I gotcha.
And so what they're saying is if you have an opportunity to move it forward a little and lessen the variance, that's something you can consider. That's up to you.
Right.
And while we're asking questions about this, is there a reason you couldn't do that, or you don't want to do that?
No, not necessarily. I mean, we definitely could do it and I can make it work, and I'm here to ask you guys what, I want to go by what you guys want me to do. One of the reasons why we set it where it was is so that bump out is the far garage, and then the porch comes along, and then there's like our living room area, which is like 15 feet wide on the end, is set back. So if we did go out to that front leading edge of the garage, it might look, I don't know. I'm fine with it, and I can make it work and do all that stuff, but it may not look.
But I think the question from the board
Talk to the
is,
boss, what she said.
is there a physical constraint? Is there a soil constraint? Is there a woodland constraint? Is there a wetland constraint? Is there a terrain constraint that prohibits you from moving it forward a little?
No.
It looks like you moved it rearward south as far as you possibly can to touch the electric line easement.
Correct.
It's right, I mean, so that's
Yep.
why it is where it is, apparently.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I figured that would
That's
necessarily.
as far south as you could go, but
It could also be moved forward just to bring it in line with the front of the house, not the front of the garage where it bumps out. It would be a
agreed, that's another,
compromise, so I did not need a 5-foot, but maybe a 12-foot.
yeah, something.
Might not look as odd that way.
Right. Yeah, I'm open to any of that. I'm open to, I just figured.
Well, the board is not going to instruct you on it.
Right.
But are you willing to move it to be aligned with the front of the
The front of the house.
If I had the option between the two, I would rather put it in front of the house, not in front of the garage.
Right.
That would be, yeah.
You want to check with your daughter on that?
Yeah, that's about,
How far is that garage?
I don't know, 4 feet maybe?
About 5 feet?
The garage-
No, because it includes the porch, so that would be roughly 8 feet.
8 feet.
Yeah.
Are you,
I could, I hope I'm not out of line. We're not gonna make a decision tonight.
Right.
You know that.
Yep.
This is, boy, it sounds like we're getting really close to do this.
No, I just,
but are you willing, are you willing to orally amend your request to that?
Yeah,
yes.
Okay, so you can consider in your deliberation month that the applicant is willing to amend the variance request to be with what you were saying.
Right, to be even with the front of the house.
so that,
Yes.
And that would lessen the variance required.
Can you show the applicant what you're talking about, Jay, so we're
Yeah.
talking about the same thing? I don't want to have that.
So it comes, some of it in line with.
he's so scared. Give me the numbers.
And is there a way we can
Kind of know what to do.
quantify that number, that mark on this map?
Not the dimensions that are on the
Don't know if
drawing.
it's got enough
Not the
dimensions
dimensions.
here to.
There are not enough dimensions on here to do.
Well, why wouldn't we ask the applicant,
Yeah.
when you come back next month, can you have the dimensions related to this so that we know what the exact variance would be, how much you're now going to be encroaching into the 50?
Yeah.
Okay, that's my problem.
Typically, during the month between now and next month, some of us may come out and want to look at the property, look at where you're putting it, so we'll have a better feel for actually seeing it.
Right.
Yeah.
But to try to have those dimensions ready so that if they vote on, they know what they're voting on exactly.
Well, I've got a comment. I'm very familiar with Riker.
Yep.
Might charge you just to move that one house. You know, I've got to ask this board. If Riker decides they're going to charge him $100 just to move that with AutoCAD, does he have to do that, or
No,
can he?
all he has to come with next is the exact
With the
encroachment.
exact dimensions.
Not a drawing.
Yeah, not a new drawing, just the dimension of the encroachment into the setback.
Right.
Yes.
Instead of 21, whatever.
It's gonna be half that.
Is it going to be 5 feet?
5 or 8, 9, or whatever the number is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, my work here is done.
All right. Okay. So any more comments or questions? Okay, do you have any more comments or questions? Just so you know, this is our public hearing meeting. We don't make a decision, we make that next month. What is the date of that meeting?
September 8th.
September 8th, okay? So we'll be making our decision then, and at this point, we're going to let you go and continue on with our meeting.
All right. Thank you guys very
Okay,
much.
thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
You made a huge mistake. First off, it's going to take him to the bar, he'll go to the bar.
Do you know what a magnet this would be at a bar?
I warned you.
It would be like taking a puppet bag.
Now, Ed wants to be held like that.
Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, the next part of our meeting is a public forum where the public can make comments about anything and anything about the ZBA.
Shortage of public.
And Mr. Mark Smith, you're the only person in the public that I know of. Do you have any comments for us?
407 years ago.
You folks do yeoman's work, I will say that. It is not easy.
It's not.
Thank you all for your service.
Thank you for yours. Okay, nobody having any comments other than Mr. Smith, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Correspondence received. Has the board received any correspondence they want to share? Nothing? Okay. Next item will be zoning board reports. Any reports of the zoning board that we want to make? Nothing? Okay, then we'll go to Mr. Smith about the planning commission liaison report.
Planning Commission in the last 2 months is dormant.
No report, okay. Next item would be an adjournment of our meeting. If we could have a motion to adjourn the
I
meeting.
so move.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Good night, everybody.
Good night.